So if they're always wrong about the big things, the media, the mainstream media, this leftist media, if they're wrong about all the big things all the time, you'd be better off flipping a coin. There has to be some intent to this. You can't just always get it wrong and then get an award.
Yeah, no, it's the template. The left tells the lie, as I said before. Big media reports it, big tech amplifies it. You try to tell the truth, they call you names. But in the end, if you persevere, the truth will come out. And the one thing I say all the time is that the only thing we get wrong about these, like I remember with the whole Trump-Russia thing, and initially there was a handful of us in Congress and there were a handful of journalists who were saying this thing makes no sense. What they're accusing President Trump of, and the fact that the dossier and all this makes no sense. And the one thing that we learn always in these things is the only thing we get wrong is it's always worse than we thought.
Yeah.
And that's kind of even, I guess, more frightening in some ways. But if you just stick to it, keep presenting the facts, in the end it prevails. And the American people we've got all these folks here, support the conservative principle, make our country the best. The American people figure it out. And I love the fact that our government it's about we the people. And we the people tend to get it right.
Okay, so a couple of really important topics to go through. We have the laptop from hell, which also leads to amazing corruption that's occurred around the president's son and his business practices. And then you have the fact that, we're told by our own government that there's nothing to see here. Then you have this, is this the most incompetent cabinet group that we've ever seen? I mean, whenever there's a problem, they don't rush to the problem, they run away from the problem. This impeachment word, which we all hate because it's always used, it seems like, against our side. You know, the House has a lot of power, the Senate has power when it comes to these questions. How do you handle all the wrongdoing within this context of, for instance, Secretary of Department of Homeland Security and this open border and 5 million illegals? How do we make it stop?
Well, we were down there last week. We were in Yuma, Arizona. Saw firsthand how serious this is. And we've been to the border several times in Texas. So the biggest problem is, as I think, as everyone in this place knows, is what's happening to our border. What's happened the last 2 years is intentional. There's no other way to interpret it. It's premeditated. It's done purposefully. And it's why we've had 5 million illegal migrants come into the country, because on day one, remember, Joe Biden on day one made 3 key changes. He said, we are no longer going to build a wall. We're going to get rid of the Remain in Mexico policy while we evaluate people's asylum claims, and we're not going to deport anyone who comes. So if you're coming, you can't fault people for wanting to come to the greatest country ever. So if you're coming, the person knows we won't have to wait in Mexico. There's no wall to get over. And oh, by the way, when we get in, we're not going to get deported. Well, Shazam, everyone's going to come, right? But he made that decision on day one. What we tried to do last week was show why it matters. We know how it happened. We know how to fix it. You got to enforce the law and put back in place those policies that were working in the previous administration. But why it matters is that's what we heard from last week. And maybe the best witness we had was the hospital administrator in Yuma, who said there are been multiple times where American families right there in the Yuma area couldn't go to the hospital, to the maternity ward to deliver children because there were so many migrants. And God bless you, we're going to help them. They're going to deliver kids. Obviously the hospital is going to help them, but they had to go to Phoenix or San Francisco or San Diego, excuse me. And that's all coming to the country, the rest of the country.
So is this idea, some of your colleagues are saying we should impeach Mayorkas?
Many are saying that. What I've said is, look, that's a decision that the entire conference has to make with Speaker McCarthy and the whole team. Does he warrant? Is it warranted? Certainly.
Can I ask you all, what do you think? Impeach Mayorkas?
Yeah. So we plan on passing legislation in the next 4 or 5 weeks out of the committee that we think, if implemented, and again, that's the fundamental problem, if implemented would fix the situation, but I just don't think this administration is going to do it. When we had this battle to see who the next speaker was going to be, one of the pleasant parts of that, despite the mainstream media getting it wrong, sometimes you have family squabbles, and sometimes something good comes out of it. Yep.
All those images, by the way, I only watch C-SPAN. I try not to watch too much other stuff. But the images you could see coming out of the floor was some, pretty far on the left members working with some people pretty far on the conservative side in our conference, and they started coming together and talking because they had a shared commonality in the fact that anybody in leadership, I mean, Nancy Pelosi did amazingly things in leadership that no one's done to try to stop free speech in the House of Representatives. They had a commonality of, hey, what's so wrong about having amendments and people being able to offer things? Do you see that as an outgrowth of what happened with that?
I do. I think there's some positive there. You know, there's in the history of our great country.
Come on, say something nice about Sheila Jackson Lee. There's got to be something.
Yeah, I always say in the history of our country, only about 12,000 individuals have had the opportunity to serve in the United States Congress. Yeah. And it is truly a privilege. And I think members take it that way. And when they're, as a member representing the folks back home, the approximately 800,000, they want to make sure they have an opportunity to offer amendments, to be engaged in the debate, and function the way the founders envisioned particularly our House of Representatives, how it was supposed to function. So some of the rule changes that we got in place through that struggle, I think are pretty positive.
Yeah, I feel actually very positive that the pain of the situation to get to Kevin McCarthy as Speaker has set us up to be much more successful as a conference. It's honest, and it's been public. But yet there's also responsibility. You talk about the thousands of people who have served in the House. Should you be allowed to use your chairmanship to just say and do anything and purport these lies? Adam Schiff said over and over again on national TV, on the floor of the House of Representatives, in different hearings, that he knew of proof of Russian collusion. And he continued with this effort to hobble Donald Trump's presidency and to make false claims. At what point is there a responsibility of a new House majority to make sure that kind of stuff never happens again?
Well, we're gonna focus on facts and truth. You're right. I think many of the things that the Democrats said about President Trump and they did say about
to say that you have proof of Russian collusion, you'd have to be lying.
Yeah, it was just not accurate. So we're gonna work hard to make sure we don't do that, and we have the facts to back it up. But again, I point this out. In spite of all that, think about what President Trump got accomplished.
Amazing. Yeah.
The idea that they attacked him so much. I may have told this story here last year, but early in the administration, I remember Mark Meadows and I were in the West Wing there, early in President Trump's administration. I think we remember in Jared's office or some office, and they had a big whiteboard on the wall. You've seen the same.
I know his office. That was Steve Bannon's office.
Maybe it was. Yeah. So a big whiteboard on the wall, and they had literally listed every single promise that President Trump had made to the American people in the.
And the problem with Trump is it was a really long list.
It was, but they were checking them off. As he, cutting taxes, reducing regulations, getting out of the Iran deal, getting out of the Paris Climate Accords, conservatives on the court. You just go down the list, building a wall. That's how you're supposed to govern. So in spite of everything they did to him, he got things done because he focused on doing what he said he would do and sticking to the Constitution and doing things the way you're supposed to in our country. That's the attitude I think we have in the House. Under Speaker McCarthy's leadership. And that's the attitude we have to bring to bear, because if we don't have that attitude, as mean and tough as the left is, we're not going to make it. We've got to have that attitude if we're going to take on the left and what they're trying to do in the country.
One final question, because we're over our time, and I've seen you control the time on your committee. You're pretty rigid, by the way. You make people talk fast. This whole idea of big tech, censoring us, shadow banning us. Basically, I know it's a legal argument, but the American people believe that that's an abridgment of their First Amendment rights, even if a lawyer will say, well, give you some kind of out clause on that. What are you going to do as the chairman to make sure the disgusting tracking the American people, intimidating the American people, these platforms are pushing woke? What are you going to do to stop it?
Well, Jonathan Turley used the term censorship by surrogate because you had the government, you had the FBI agent Elvis Chan sending emails to the big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, to the big tech companies saying, we think these accounts, these tweets violate your terms of service. That's crazy. Right? That was going on. And then Twitter would take down those accounts or use their term visibility filtering. They'd shadow ban and do things to these tweets. And so, this is wrong. We're working with Energy and Commerce. You have to look at Section 230, transparency, all that stuff.
Section 230, let them get sued when they do these.
All these things have to be examined, and in legislation, the legislation will probably come out of Energy and Commerce. But we got to do that. We got to do, because I think it's the right term. Censorship by surrogate, the government pressuring, priming these social media companies to shape and mold the message instead of just letting, again, we the people get the facts and the information and decide for ourselves.
Well, I have a feeling that all of you are rooting you on, and the chairman of the Energy Commerce Committee take on that fight.